Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Scyther, and welcome to episode number 2 of my Intro to UI series here on YouTube. In today's episode, I'll be going over most of the different properties that you'll find yourself using when you're making yourself UI. A lot of these properties carry on from element to element, for example, size or position. So if I cover the property once in one UI element, then I will not be covering it again in a future UI element. That way, the video is not just an hour and a half long, me constantly talking about size and position. So without further ado, let's get started. So here we are, we're going to place our screen GUI with a frame inside of it and start going down the properties. So selection image object, honestly, I never use it. You probably won't use it either. If anybody in the comments wants to explain this one for me, go ahead. But I've never used it. I don't even know what it does. It's just there at the top. Then we have archivable. So archivable basically means, can you copy and paste this thing? Can you clone it? And if it's false, you can't. Do you ever use it? No. I hear it's mostly used for plugins, but personally, I've never used it. So the very next property that we're going to have is active. So what active means is, let me actually show you because it'll be easier to show you than to actually explain. So we're going to insert a text button and we're going to put it right here. And then we're going to take this frame, we're going to make it transparent and resize it over the button. Now, if the active property is set to false on this frame, you can still click this button even though it's beneath the frame. However, if the frame's active property is set to true, you can no longer click on this button while the frame is on top of it. Now, the next property that we have is actually anchor point. So anchor point is something that I did not use for the longest time, but it's actually quite helpful. So as you can see right here at the very, very top left of this frame, there's a little black square. That little black square indicates the anchor of this frame. Now, whatever you assign to position down here, which we haven't gone to yet, but it should be self-explanatory. Whatever you assign to position, it'll be relative to wherever this anchor point is. So if you assigned, for example, this position to be 0.5 and the anchor point is left wherever it is at default 0, 0, it'll put it halfway in the middle of the screen relative to the anchor point. However, it moves it from like the far left side of the frame rather than moving it from the center of the frame. Now, if you wanted to position it according to the center of the frame, you have to move the anchor point from the corner of the frame to the center of the frame. And the way that you would do that is 0.5, 0.5. This might be kind of difficult for you to understand up front, but trust me, with practice and using anchor points and making UI, this will make a lot more sense as to why having a 0.5, 0.5 anchor point is quite useful. Personally, because I've not used an anchor point of 0.5 for like the longest time, I don't always use it. I use it sometimes, but I don't just default to 0.5, 0.5. Some people do. If you're new to making UI, I might recommend defaulting to 0.5, 0.5. It might make learning UI easier for you. Now, automatic size is something that I don't ever use. I think I just have it on none, whatever the default value is. So probably you'll never have to use it, so we'll just be skipping over it. Background color, self-explanatory. You can change the color of the background, color of the frame. Pretty cool. The very next one we got is background transparency. How transparent do you want that background frame to be? You can either move the little slider or you can set in a value manually, do whatever you want. Border color, you can't see it very well, but around this square, actually there is no border. So these three actually go hand in hand. So we have border color, border mode, and border size pixel. I've never used the border mode. We'll find out what that is in a moment. But border size pixel, you can basically put an outline around your frame. This is actually kind of outdated. I never use this anymore, but it used to be useful. So now it has a border around the frame, and what you can do is with border color, you can change that from say black to green to whatever you want it to be. And then border mode, let's find out what that is. Outline, middle, inset. Let's see what it does. Okay, so it made, it just moves the border pretty much. So use whichever one you prefer to use. The next property that we have is intersectable. This is something I've never used, so you probably won't use it either. Then we have layout order, which I'm assuming has to do with UI table layout or UI page layout. Those layouts I didn't go over in the last episode that I'll have a future tutorial on in the future once I know how to actually use them. Then we have name. Name is real simple. It's the name of the element. Then we have parent. Where is it located at? It's inside of screen GUI. That's why it says screen GUI for the parent. After that, we have position. So position, this is going to be an interesting one. So position is honestly something that you just have to kind of learn. So position takes in a udim2 value. That gives you 4 numbers. You can see it's also broken down into two different sets surrounded by brackets. So it's 0.5 slash, well not slash, comma 0 inside of one of the brackets, and then it's another 0.5 comma 0 in the other brackets. The first number, the x value of the first set of brackets, is going to be your scale. The second one is going to be offset, and that's going to remain true for both sets of numbers. Your offset is going to be pixel size. Your scale is going to be monitor size. I'm going to recommend 95% of the time, you're always going to be using scale because you want to make sure that your UI looks the same on computer as it looks on tablet, as it looks on phone, as it looks on Xbox, as it looks on PlayStation 5, like anywhere. You want your UI to look the same, consistent, everywhere. So you're most likely going to be wanting to work with the first and the third number. You can mess with the second number if you want, the offset, but I would recommend against that. Otherwise, your UI is going to look different on different screens. So scale, what that means is it's going to take in a value between 0 and 1. If the value is 0.5, it's going to cover up 50% of the screen. So I'll type in 0.5 right now into that one. Let's remove the offset values there. So now we have 0.5, 0.5. So this is covering up half of the screen. If we were to change it to 1, what do you think it's going to do? Correct. It's going to change it to the entirety of the screen. So boom, just like that. If we want to cover up only 20% of the screen, what do you think we would do? 0.20 or 0.2, exactly. And that is, and that is how position is changed. Now, how you center things, how you do that kind of stuff can possibly be explained in a future video. But I would just recommend using anchor point 0.5, 0.5. That way you don't have to do any math. And if you want to put something in the middle, then you would just do position 0.5 or position 0.5 for the X and 0.5 in the Y. That'll center whatever UI element that you are positioning. It'll put it right in the middle as long as your anchor point is 0.5 and the position values are both 0.5/0.5. Now rotation, self-explanatory. It's the rotation of the UI element. Change to the 45, tilts it at 45-degree angle. Pretty cool. Don't use it all the time, but you can sometimes. Size is exactly the same deal as position, where I kind of already went over it. It's going to cover up, it's going to have the scale, it's going to have offset, value between 0 and 1 for the offset, or for the scale. Whatever pixel size you want for the offset, change it just like position. It'll change the size of the frame. Size constraint, something I don't use. Style, these are just preset frame styles. That's what it's called. That nobody ever uses. These are super outdated. These have to be from like 2011 or something. Nobody ever uses these anymore. But they're there. Just leave it on custom. You want to make your own UI visible. Can you see it? Or can you not see it? Z-index. So what Z-index means is UI is mostly based off of an X and Y axes, but there's also a Z axis. Now in Roblox, it's a 3D game. The 3D part is the Z axis really. It's the depth. It's the like how much is forward and backwards rather than left and right, up or down. And UI is kind of different because it's a 2D image, but there's a 3D axis. And that would be the third one would be the Z-index. So what it does is basically it's UI's layer system. If you're familiar with Paint.net or Photoshop, and what it means is elements on a higher layer will have higher priority than elements on a lower layer. So if you were to make the Z-index, for example, for this frame, if we made it 5 and we duplicated another frame and made this one, we'll make it a different color. We'll make it like orange. And we were to change the Z-index to 10, if we were to move this one on top of the purple one, what do you think is going to happen? It has a higher Z-index, so it has a higher priority. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to cover it up. But what happens if you were to lower that Z-index to, say, 2? It's lower than 5. It's going to put it underneath. So yeah, it's Roblox's layer system. It's very, very useful. And yeah, I'd recommend using it. Now, then we have clip descendants. So clip descendants, what it's going to do is, so we have this frame right here, right? This is going to be the parent. If we were to put another frame inside of it, this would be called a descendant or a child of the parent. So this frame is the descendant. Well, we'll name this a white white frame. We'll name this purple frame. So white frame is the descendant of purple frame. And if we check hide descendants of purple frame, then when the child or descendant is outside of the parent, which I can't even select this white frame for some reason and move it, unfortunately, but when it is outside of the parent, so for example, if I were to do negative 0.2 on the position, you cannot see it. But if you uncheck clip descendants, boom, you can see it. So that's what clip descendants does. It's pretty useful. You don't have to use it always, but I've used it mostly for like pet inventories that use scrolling frames. I feel like scrolling frames, you have to use clip descendants a lot. Selection down here, again, this is probably for UI page layout. It's just something, I'm sorry, I'm clicking all the wrong buttons. It's just something I have not learned yet, so maybe in the future I will go over it. Okay, and nextly, let's move into text buttons and see what properties we have over here that might be new. So, let's see, automatic button color, auto button color. Is this when if you uncheck it, if I mouse over it, it won't change colors? Yes, that is what will happen. So when you uncheck it, it'll no longer have this hover color where it gets all dark. So that is what auto button color will do. Okay, so next up we have text labels. So what is new inside of text label? It's probably just the text properties. So we have fonts. You can change it easily here. You can even add more fonts if you wanted to just by scrolling down to the very bottom and hitting, well, no, you don't have to scroll. You just hit add more fonts and that'll add fonts. Very cool. Styles. Do you want it to be bold? Do you want it to be italices? Line height, I've honestly never used before. This property, I don't even know how to say it, is new. Max visible graphemes. Don't know what that is. Never used it. Rich text. So this has to do with something that we'll cover a little bit later called like text strokes. Pretty much, if you have this enabled, then you will not be able to use any of these different UI strokes, like right here. If you have rich text enabled, then see how it's like darker up here? If you have it enabled though, that darker, that outline part is going to go away. So you want to have that disabled whenever you're adding anything that isn't like a default text property. So most of the time that's going to be disabled. So if you notice that your like UI stroke or your UI borders aren't working, whatever they are, then your rich, not UI border, but yeah, if your UI stroke's not working, it's probably because your rich text is enabled. So just disable that to fix that. Text, pretty self-explanatory. What do you want to say? I'm a text label, so I will put text label. Text color, once again, very self-explanatory. Text direction, left to right, right to left. I don't even know what that did. Probably not much. Text scaled. So will it scale with the box that it's inside of? So if the box grows, will the text grow or will it stay the same like that? That's the question. So text scaled will do that so that the text is the same size as its parent. Text, oh, let's resize that down. There we go. So next up on the properties, we have text size, self-explanatory. It won't work if you have text scaled to equal true, so disable it, and then you can change the size to whatever size you want manually. Then we have text transparency. How transparent do you want that text to be? Text truncate, is that how you say it? I don't even know what it does either. So you probably won't actually have to ever use it. Text wrapped. So pretty much when you type something really long, so text label, really long sentence, wow, so long. Will it say all in one line or will it wrap around kind of like that? If it's disabled, it'll just be one really long line. If it's enabled, then it'll wrap around into its box, into its parent, similarly to that. So text X alignment, where is it going to align on the X axis? I use this quite a bit actually nowadays. So for example, like say you had a coins label, I'll have like coins right here and I can put X axis on the left. It'll start over there and I can duplicate that text label. I'll change that to coin amount, change the text X alignment to right. And now, what happened there? We'll do that. I don't know why this one's gone right here. I just, very interesting situation going on there. But pretty much it'll change where the text is going to be at on the X axis. I have no idea why one of those text labels is hidden. Oh, that's why. It's because the frame is, the text label itself, transparency is not one. But yeah, there we go. So now you can see when the X axis When the X alignment is set to right, it'll start on the right side of the X axis. If it's set to left, it'll start on the left, and center puts it obviously in the center. And Y axis is literally just the same thing. It's just up or down, so top or bottom. Next up, we have text box. Once again, text box is going to be very similar to text label, but I know that there's one property here that is, actually, there's like a few properties here. So let's go find those properties real quick. So we have clear text on focus. So say this says a redeem code, right? You're making a redeem code kind of a UI so people can get Twitter codes and enter them in. That is going to be the placeholder text, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, clear on text. So if we disable it, now you can't clear it on clicking it. It'll stay there. But if you enable it, then it'll clear up. So yeah, pretty cool. We have cursor position. I've never used this. I doubt you will use it either. That is, oh, okay. So cursor position, the way it works is say there is some like text here. Redeem code, and I set my cursor position to 5. I think it's gonna start on like the 5th letter. No, it doesn't. It doesn't even do that. So honestly, I've never used it. You probably won't use it either. What else do we have new over here? Text editable. Editable. I don't know what's different about that. And oh, it's basically I can't even type stuff in there. So when text editable is false, you can't even type inside of the box anymore. What else do we got going on? But yeah, I would probably say the only other property here that you would use is placeholder text. So for example, if we just have this as redeem code as default, and then placeholder text would be, let's show you real quick. What would be an example of this? Like enter code. Now when you click on this, it'll say enter code here inside of the placeholder text before you type anything. But as soon as you start typing anything, it'll remove that enter code. Sorry, my mouse is just like disconnecting while making a video and it went dink. So hopefully that turns on here in a second. All right, mouse is all good. But yeah, that's what placeholder text does. It puts text into the box once you click on it, and you can change that to whatever you want. If you want to change the color of that, you can change placeholder color 3 over here. It's like red, for example. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty useful sometimes. We got anything else interesting over here? Nope, not at all. Moving on. All right, next thing we got going on is image button. This is just going to be like text button, honestly, but it's just an image instead. So the properties should be actually entirely the same. The only one that's going to be different is hover image. So pretty much what this is going to be is it's just like this one over here, this image property over here. But it's what you want the image to display when you hover over it. So if you want this to actually change, like let me show you for example. So I'm actually going to replace hover image with what image was and set image to nothing. Now when I hover over this, it's going to show the hover image instead of the default image that was already shown there. So pretty cool, but other than that, there's nothing new inside of here. Now, all of the properties for all of these other UI elements, I'm honestly not going to be able to cover just inside this one video. It would go on for a very long time, but I will go over a few of them. So for example, if we insert a frame real quick, we put that in there, we move it to the center, and we insert something like, say, a UI corner. That will change the corners. So instead of being sharp like that, they'll be more rounded, and you just change the second number. I usually change the second number always. I don't know why. But you just change that and it'll make it more rounded depending on what that number is. You can even make it a circle if you wanted to. So pretty cool. If we were to do something like UI border, what that's going to do is not UI border, it's a UI stroke. It'll put a border around the UI. Again, very cool. There's the thickness property. That's how thick you want it to be. Transparency, how transparent. Line joint mode. I don't use this. This is actually just like the border. Oh, that's kind of cool. So it changes the actual border. So right here it's on bevel, and you see that the edges are beveled. They're rounded. They're not just so sharp. You can also change the color of it if you want to. So that's pretty cool. What other cool little elements do we have for UIs that I can go over real quick? So we can just check real quick. Viewport frame, we actually went over in the other video, and there'll be a whole new tutorial on that later. We have UI gradient. This is going to add color to our element. So right now it's on white, but we want to change it to something like red to orange. Again, we went over this briefly inside the other video, but that's very cool. You can also change the direction. So this is going from left to right. Say we want it to go from top to down, we just change the rotation to like 90. Then I'll go from top down. So pretty cool. There's also transparency. Once again, another property that you might want to change. And you can see how these UIs start looking pretty cool once you start messing with the features and experimenting. So yeah, pretty neat. Anyways, this video is encroaching upon 20 minutes. That is going to conclude this video. Went over most of the properties, not every single property for all of the UI elements, because there's a lot of properties. There's like hundreds of properties. A lot of this stuff you're just going to have to kind of practice on your own or look it up on the Roblox documentation page. Just again, Google Roblox documentation UI or GUI, and you'll find all sorts of information on all the different properties. Just type the property name after, check out the dev forum, that kind of thing. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, leave a comment down below on what I can improve on or to explain things a little bit better than me if you can do so. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys hopefully all in the next video.